Welcome to the Music Business Buddy, the podcast decoding how the modern music industry actually works. I'm Johnny Amos, industry consultant, artist manager, producer, educator, and author of The Music Business for Music Creators. Every Wednesday, I explore the ideas, technology, and industry shifts shaping the future of music. This show helps creators navigate the rapidly changing business of music.
Hello everybody and welcome. This week my guest is Lucas Rizzo, founder and CEO of Hekta Music Group. Lucas is somebody I've been trying to get on the podcast for a little while. He's fascinating. So he's still only 29 years old, UK based. He was in music a few years ago and he's come back to it recently and has started up a music company that incorporates all sorts of different aspects, from Catalogue acquisition and artist development to an incubator and accelerator program within his label as well. He's worked across brands through techs, through mergers and acquisition, through capital, through tech startups. He's been involved with all sorts of different things. And he comes into music again now in an incredibly informed place, where he has a very good and sharp and nuanced understanding of where technology meets music and artist development, all with a focus on the future of the music industry. He's a really, really interesting guy. He has some fascinating views. I'm going to hand over to the interview now. Lucas, welcome to the Music Business Buddy. How are you?
Great. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for coming on, man. I mean, you've lived, in worlds of music and tech and startups. What became, would you say, obvious to you after experiencing all three of those things that wasn't obvious to you before you, or when you started?
I say that probably the interconnectedness of it all. And now, having come back to music, I would say that I see it even more. And sometimes it's strange how, just following the flow of life, it leads to exactly where you want it. But I would say with a different type of depth to it. And what I mean with that is I wouldn't have been who I am today without having gone through all of those trials and errors. And all of my exposure to this industry is what I bring with me, that eventually is what gives me that unique edge that, maybe someone that has been, obviously, like, nothing to say against, who's been in the industry just on the music side. But like, I believe that is sometimes having perspective across the board is what also helps, as I say, like, to have that unique edge.
Yeah. Especially across all of those areas, you just look at things a little differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because, for instance, I've seen a lot of music tech startups now, like, especially AI enabled, like one after another. The barrier to entry is so low in that sense, it comes with its pros and cons, obviously. But there is a lot of industry support so like there is such an eagerness I've seen coming back to it, that the investment funds are readily available. Obviously, like, you gotta bring a bit some with everything. From what I've seen with my own experience, you gotta bring some traction. Whatever you are, like, whether you're an artist, whether you're a startup, whoever you are, you got to bring some traction with you. And that is simply because I think the magnetism of a mission, this is something I've been speaking about as I meet artists, as I meet collaborators, partners, like, when they ask me about my team, and it all came together so organically. One conversation led to another, in a way that all of what is happening with Hekta Music Group is so organic and smooth, and it's something I'm proud of, because like, I've always been so focused with so many different type of ventures, and I've been seeing this one, Hekta, the idea of the record label going so well on its own. And what I mean with that, I didn't have to do any type of like the effort was barely there, and it was almost like the universe, for me, trying to recalibrate my orientation towards what was and what has always been the mission for me, which is music. And so, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, but was there like a specific moment when you realized that kind of success and fulfillment were not necessarily the same thing?
Yeah, I believe that in the past year, as I said, I did keep myself busy. I've been in this in the search fund space, which is, a subset of private equity. And with that, what you do is pretty much you acquire businesses that have already been trading and they're mature, and you acquire them for the sake of whatever other reason, like either you build a portfolio or for the sake of an exit, etc. And that is what I did for the past 2 years and a half. And I did put together a little community at one point. And everything that I did along the way, it always came from my heart. But when you are feeding something and you don't feel like you're being fed back from it, that was the case. And that makes you wonder, that makes you question why, right? I I am someone that I ask myself a lot of times, why is this, why do I feel this way? Sometimes so much for my own good. But yeah, I got to a bit of a crisis, but with every crisis is what eventually um lead to the answer that you're looking for, right? For me was nothing is fulfilling me as much as music. And I've had my moments where I was like, having been an artist and having stopped on paper, let's say, that artist path in 2020 when pandemic happened, 2021 actually, um there was that type of grieving that I had to do of that side of me, the side of me that has seen the music industry, the whole music pursuit as an artist in a very probably toxic way. It was non-sustainable. It was like a lot about the recognition, like, because at that point it became a toxic part of it, of my identity. And there had to be a bit of a major ego death for me to come back all these years later, because nothing was gonna fulfill or satisfy my soul as much as being involved in music somehow. So that's how I came back to it, because again, like, there's only like, it's like drinking sea water, right? You only get more thirst and thirst, right? So I think that's a good example right there.
Interesting. Do you know, I'm just wondering, with you saying that there, Lucas, I think that the music industry, well, it is undoubtedly full of people that perhaps once made music that no longer do, but are still involved in the business of music. I think that describes many, many thousands of people. But something that's never really spoken about is that transition point, right? That point of where, like, almost like the old you kind of goes and the new you comes into the door. Like, I don't feel like that's a subject that's spoken about very often.
You're right. It's always about bringing forward, okay, this is a new me. What about that process that you had to shed? I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Substance.
Don't think so. No.
All right, so it's very gory.
Okay.
It's very gory, and like, for the sake of them being the most beautiful version of themselves, they always, at that moment, like, whatever they take this substance, they have to go through this very gory type of transformation. And, yeah, that's definitely not glorified whatsoever, and very much hidden, because it's not like, it's ugly. We all want to be sold that type of story of, success after having struggle, but not many want to see the struggle, because for the sake of projections, right? This is all about psychology. For the sake of, my life maybe is already a bit shitty, so why would I want to see the shit? But some people actually are good with it. Like, they like to to see others being like not so okay with their lives, so they can feel better about themselves. But others, I don't know. that's the voyeurism. And that's a
Yeah.
whole different concept that comes with it. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that adds more relatability.
Yeah.
Is it? Yep.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
to the whole path of someone, and I can tell you, I've had many ups and downs. There were long periods that I didn't understand anything that I was doing. I very much doubted everything that I was doing, and not that the imposter syndrome ever goes away, but even when I spoke with, let's say, more successful people, like, or more successful than me, they would say the same. Like, I asked, does it ever go away, this imposter syndrome type? And they say no, actually. So that is something that made me feel a bit better in that sense. Like, despite the success perceived or achieved in someone, I guess if you use that type of imposter syndrome, how can I say, like, in a healthy way, as like to keep challenge you, or that can lead to something positive, perhaps.
Yeah. I think so. Well, I mean, there's many different aspects to your career. You now hold interests in sort of catalog acquisition and artist development. What are your goals in those areas moving forward?
So in regards of art, so the catalog acquisition part is how I came back to music. And I probably decided, whether consciously or subconsciously, to approach it. Well, now no longer subconsciously. If I know it, it's no longer subconscious. So I approached it, I reckon, looking back at it, because I wasn't sure about approaching the music. So approaching it from a catalog perspective was still something that I was doing at the time, just, business evaluation and like all numbers. Then it got to a point where I'm like, I already could feel it coming, the aspect of the record label, because they work in tandem, in my opinion. Like, you have the executive the executive arm of what is the catalog management, which is the passive arm of the intellectual property, right? So I think the two feed each other in that sense. And at one point, I knew that this label thing would have happened. I didn't know if I was going to manage to acquire one, or at that point, this is exactly what I did. The multiples were insane. Like, what I was hearing from potential sellers that were exiting. And I was like, you know what? I'm just probably a couple conversation away so I can launch my own. And that is exactly what happened. So, yeah, in terms of the artist development side, well, Hekta, the way Hekta Music Group works, and therefore Hekta Records, we work more like an accelerator. And what I mean with that, we are looking to be a bridge for artists that are already, like, they already have some type of trajectory. They, perhaps the ones we've spoken with so far, for instance, they deal with lack of structure, lack of direction. Some do have the funding, some don't. We bring some funding for those that are in that position to receive some. And with that, we structure the plan forward. And if we agree on the plan forward, then that becomes a partnership. Like, I see it as a joint venture type, where most often than not, and if an artist wants it, that's the priority, then our partnership leads to a major label involvement, where the infrastructure can be amplified of what has been done thus far. So in terms of artist development, the pure aspect of it, where just, as I say, like, we deal with artists above, for instance, a very silly metric that I don't even like to mention, but for the sake of understanding, is probably like we deal with 50,000 monthly listeners above on the accelerator part, in terms of like Spotify, for instance. And it doesn't mean that the ones obviously below this metric are not worthy. Oh my God, not very far from me to say something like that. It's a whole different type of effort, and the time horizon is also different. The expectation and the type of support is also different. So, with that being the case, we recently actually are starting a collaboration with BPM Collective. They're very solid partners in the sense, like, they've been doing some of their own artist developments with discrete success. And therefore, I do see them potentially as a an extension of the artist development, which will be equal to the 20% of our signing, 20 to 30% of our signings. But most of our signing, 80 to 70 to 80%, is going to be on the accelerator side.
Okay, very interesting and very in keeping with the times as well, right? It makes sense as well what you said there about monthly DSP numbers, because what I'm taking from that is that you correct me if I'm wrong on how I've interpreted this, but if an artist is above that threshold, then the DSPs effectively have a kind of like at least a partially good understanding of who their audience is,
That's it.
and how they can be reached. Under that, it's a bit more kind of like, right, we have to get to that threshold so the DSPs understand your audience, and that takes longer, right? So, is
It's a
that
bit
fair?
like, yeah, I think you're right. And to give a further example of that question you asked me before, like what I took with me across startup technology and, the spaces. And there are frameworks that can be transposed. And what is a product market fit for a startup is the same applicable for the artist. You just don't say it out loud because you don't want to make it look like a very serious commercial entity, or a commercial path, and you are soft with the terms. But I mean, as I say, like whenever I speak with an artist or their manager, like I always remind them that I'm an artist first, but I can also speak the commercial language. That is something that all of this years feeling lost is in, like, not in my natural domain, which is music. It was necessary for me to be equipped with this type of knowledge. So I can go on and have this conversation with both the manager and both the artist. Like I know what it's like to be both in that sense. So to answer your question, yes, I believe that the DSP element is a like product market fit. Yes, okay, the music works. Let's see to amplify it further with which direction. What is the vision first thing first? Well, what do you see that I am not maybe seeing yet, or that I can enable you to achieve? That is, I think that's my goal right here.
Yeah.
It's get to the level.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, because sometimes, it might be that, let's say you get one artist that's kind of, a very successful kind of mid-level artist that are not necessarily going to be having chart success, but have a lot of licenses sold in media, in television, in film,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah.
And then you get other acts that might be more like, right, that's a pop act. We need a major label infrastructure to break this artist. Is that the kind of thing you mean, where it's like where you look at the accelerator and go, do we go that way? Do we go this way? And you kind of look at the variables.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, my approach inevitably is also very much data based, and that comes with probably like what a lot of other peoples in the industry use, which is chart metric. But I don't stop there. That's a good source of data, but obviously like get access to the inner data of the platforms themselves for the artist standpoint, as well as other type of tools. I wouldn't say that that's the only thing I use, and the good old intuition.
Yeah.
You know what that means. So I think that's just not not replicable. Even if you try to build how can the standards operations, the
Mm.
SOPs, that is not something that can be given. I mean, it can, but
Yeah, a human interpretation, a human mind, a human heart. Yeah, exactly.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, one of the many reasons why I was so interested in talking to you, Lucas, is because you do come at this subject from a slightly different angle, a more multi-dimensional angle. Like the fact that
Hmm.
you can sit with an artist and talk about artistry is because you're an artist. The
Oh
fact that
yeah.
you can talk about, startups and technologies because you've been there and you've done it and you know their language too. I mean, what lessons from those worlds have genuinely improved the way that you sort of approach the music industry today?
This is a very good question. I guess the wisdom of having lived um all of these parallel lives, you could say. And again, like I'm 29, but I've spent most of my early 20s escaping from responsibilities. Music was a rebellious act as well, until eventually it's becoming like now I have. It's a bit of a Saturn return. I'm not sure how much you are into astrology or these things, but I am, and it's my time where I get to evaluate all of the things that I did. And as I told you earlier, like I wouldn't have been who I am today without all of these chapters. And I think this is exactly what makes all of this past. Would I have, I don't know, like changed something? Probably yes, but I'm not sure what would have been the outcome. You know, so it's a bit a lot about accepting a lot what's been like. You know what I had to go through for the sake of having this perspective, which I am very much, always grateful for my brain. I think that's the best asset that I have. And all in all, yes, there's nothing like there's no theory. There is nothing like practice, in terms of like just getting things done, see, and just integrate the lessons on your own skin. I think that's just about the best way to do things. And that's why like my background in terms of academics is so I'm a dropout. Not because I didn't have what it take for me to go to a university or something. I actually am still very much interested this day, but every time that I wanted, there will be some type of unforeseen circumstance, whether it's like business, whether it's like anything else that would have happened at that point, which didn't allow me to pursue such. But I mean, I'm a lover of knowledge in all source and in all forms. So, yeah, I mean,
Well,
that's what I bring here.
I would say you're very highly self-educated, Lucas. I'd say that you've made a lot of effort
Thank you.
to educate yourself, and not everybody can do that, right? So well,
I appreciate it.
yeah, it's true, man. So one of the things that I find very interesting, this year in 2026, is the role that the creator economy plays on or within the music industry. Do you think that like artists are sort of under pressure to turn every passion into a business? Does it feel like that to you?
Yes, that is very much so because how can I say? Well, from what I've seen with my own eyes, there's a lot of talented artists, right? The problem with an energy like creativity knows no boundary by design, at its source. And when you try to how do you say, like define it and structure it, that is either where you get, a nice work as an outcome, or you get rebellion. As I said, like for the sake of, we don't want to be caged, we don't want to be defined by a sound, we don't want to be, don't stop us. This is who we are in our full form, full and raw form. So those artists will surely not have any, perhaps even interest in developing a career, or maybe if they do, is gonna be very much ups and downs in that sense. But those that are educated and have an understanding that there is not the commercial aspect without the music and music without the commercial, then they can definitely, like build a healthy type of relationship with their work. Like the artists that I spoke to recently, some of them are very much, their own manager, despite having the manager. Like they create a channel of discussions with everyone that is involved and or that is interested in their project. And that's where you build something up nicely, like, that everyone has the type of mindset there. You don't have to educate, or if you have to educate, there is receptivity there. Those that, as I say, like are more rebellious, it's very hard to work with, honestly. And maybe it's about maturity, as in like maturity in their craft, or they are just simply okay with being where they are, or just being independent, and it's okay. Like maybe not someone I would work with, but it's okay because it works for them. So no judgment.
Yeah, well put. Well put. It's very Very, very interesting to listen to you, Lucas. You're an old soul, man. You're an old soul. It's like you've got a lot of wisdom. Like I'm immediately
Thank
thinking
you.
of like examples of artists that I've encountered over the years that fall
I'm sure you
into
have.
like one of those two categories that you're explaining there.
But I'm curious, like, what has been usually the answer to this type of question that you've asked before, perhaps? Or maybe if not the same question, like around this theme?
Yeah, I think yeah, I was wondering that myself in many ways. So I was interested to see what you think. I suppose to summarise the patterns on that subject, that question of are artists under pressure to turn every passion into a business? I think it depends who you ask. I think artists might feel like yes, that's the case, and I think there are a lot of people in the artist teams that are trying to make that the case. So, for example, I think what we're seeing now is a lot of paralleling in artist careers whereby the music is kind of the catalyst, but it's the jam, but the bread and butter is like the cookery channel where it's used, or
You're right.
or something like that, where it's like this kind of like
Yes.
offshoot thing over here. And I think on a corporate level, record companies in particular are really struggling to adapt to that. And asking whether or not they even should do. And I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is that I feel like there is a pressure on artists to have to do that. But I think at some point it's really healthy to say to an artist, that thing that you do over there, let's say that textiles hobby, is actually off brand for your music, and keep it as a hobby, right? And then there's the other things where you go, those t-shirts that you make over there, they actually look like the music that you make. That should be a merch product. Do you see the difference between those two things?
Yes. And I actually have an example for you. We are talking to an artist that is an Afrobeat, Afrofusion artist from Seattle. Like, I wasn't even too familiar with what the scene looks like in the US in regards of this, because I'm so deep into the UK one, for instance, about it. But I was, positively surprised by like how he has been able to actually he launched this clothing line that it also like channels the revenue, like the revenue that comes through it. It's channeled towards the music project, and the two fuse together. And it's not even the first time, obviously, that we've seen this. Like, the first example that comes to mind is perhaps The Weeknd with the EXO type of clothing line. He's been doing it all the way back 15 years. OVO by Drake, first example that comes to mind. So yeah, it's inevitable. It's inevitable for the artist to express sometimes in multiple forms. And that is also, though, where the true authenticity, in my opinion, comes out. Because we as artists, we are channeling oftentimes energies, whether it's creativity, and creativity doesn't just stop at music. It stops at, like, it doesn't stop actually. It's channeled through every possible mean that someone is open to express, I reckon.
Yeah. Sometimes, though, it takes a little bit of business awareness or maybe objectivity to be able to look at it and go, is that paralleling? Is it actually symbiotic? Is it actually supportive of the music? And the wisdom to know the answer to that, because there is usually a right or wrong answer, I find. So it's difficult if it always has to come from the artist. I love this and I love that, and it's all part of me, therefore it fits. And sometimes it does, but if it doesn't, that's okay too. I think the wisdom is in understanding the difference between the two, and that's where teams around artists can be very helpful, not just in the strategy, but also in identifying that symbiotic relationship between what they're paralleling against their music.
With symbiotic, do you mean authentic?
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, I suppose so. You mentioned Chartmetric earlier. When sometimes when you look at something on Chartmetric and it'll tell you if it's on brand or off brand, and I love that. It's so clever. And because every time I look at it, I always think, yeah, that's brilliant. That, like, it makes perfect sense. It's that, really. I guess that's what.
Well, you can also see, right? You can also see with by intuition when something, like a certain image is wants to be portrayed. And then you see where it's lost or diluted, or these things. And sometimes that comes because of external suggestions and the artist not following their true authentic intuition, which is something I stress with. Like whether we are approaching, like, please, keep it real, like be authentic. That's the best way to market yourself. That's it.
Yeah, true. But like for that intuition, you're definitely right about that. We need that intuition, like what you referred to there, Lucas. The trouble is if, let's say, for example, you mentioned they're an Afrobeats artist on the west coast of America. I don't know what would be on or off brand through my own intuition, through my own knowledge. If I were to research it, I would be able to create an informed understanding of it. So what then becomes more, is it important to be able to use the tools and the strategy to be able to understand that in order to kind of figure out how it depicts itself to a marketplace? Or is it my actual knowledge base of those things? If my knowledge is not there on that, how would I know?
Right. So I think the formula here is about, acquiring all data point possible. Okay. If you're not informing something, right? So you can create a playbook.
Yeah.
As in like, okay, so XYZ are this way. All right. So as per my own experience, maybe I shall tweak it a bit because of different circumstance here and there, but that's the playbook right there. So this is also the intention of what we're doing as well. Inevitably, it's just wisdom acquired playbook, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. Okay. So the authenticity thing, let me ask you a final question about that, because it's a really interesting one, because I know that there's so many people that are craving authenticity in this age where there's social media and AI and all these things. So if somebody listening to this right now feels that they've drifted away from the thing that they truly care about, what would you tell them?
Well, having been there and having been a survivor of that drifting, I can tell you that I ended up exactly where I wanted to be, I reckon. There has always been a side of me, perhaps, that I never truly felt alone in this, honestly. Like whether you're religious or not, spiritual or not, even at the lowest points, there was always a type of a North Star being present. So I say that even the getting lost part is part of finding yourself, your true self. So once again, like, it's just part of the process. It's a paradoxical part of the process, but it's part of the process.
So instead of
it's easy to say for me, as in like,
no, I get it, and maybe that is the lesson. So instead of being afraid of getting lost, embrace getting lost as part of what you have to find.
Yes, and the more you fight something, the longer it lasts.
Yeah.
Why am I here? Why am I here? Why am I here? Well, you're here. So what are you gonna do about it? And eventually, it took me years for me to eventually accept certain things. But despite that, you could tell me, I think I can say to myself that the timing is right. When I came back to, once again, like 8 months ago, I came back to the music through the Catalogue space, and like the doors were so open. There was a lot of people willing to have a conversation, and even about the label, even about being supported as an artist. Like, it is so open, the industry these days, that I couldn't have imagined to be like this all of these years back. Or maybe it was a projection of my own fears, So yeah, I think just getting lost was indeed part of the process for this to happen.
I love that. I absolutely
Thank
love
you.
that. Lucas, thank you so much for coming here today, for joining me. You are really and truly a fascinating guy, man. You really are.
Appreciate it.
And I appreciate you coming and talking, and I shall look forward to keeping up to date with everything that you work on in the future. Good luck, man.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there you go. Very, very, very interesting guy. To have like this kind of multi-dimensional mindset on the subject of music through the lens of somebody who's been through mergers and acquisitions and tech startups and all sorts of different things. Lucas, he's only 29 years old, but to me represents somebody that's going to be playing a very significant part in the music industry in the decades ahead. he has been through his ups and downs, as we all have, and he's found out an awful lot about himself and about what role he can play in music to artists and to music companies. I think he is a name which people will be seeing a lot of in the next few years, in the next few decades. He offers a great deal to a lot of people, and he just looks at things in an interesting way. To be able to kind of talk to artists and understand artists, because he was an artist, is an artist, to be able to talk to tech companies, to be able to talk to management, to be able to talk to record companies, to be able to use, as he puts it himself, his intuition to be able to guide people into the best situations possible. All those things that I explained there are very often the roles of multiple people sat together in a room. I think Lucas can do all of those things all at the same time and yet still work with other people to partner up and move things forward. He's brilliant. He's a fascinating guy. I hope you enjoyed listening to him. Until next time, everybody, have a great day and may the force be with you.